Good morning, my name is Tim. Welcome to the SRM 3D Prints channel. So we're going to do this video a little bit different. Going to give you a sneak peek of how far we're going to get in this project today. Today this has been going on for a few days now. Anyway, so we'll go back in time, show you how we got here, and then I'll show you what's changed and how far we are.
Now the first piece I'm going to work on here is the support shaft for the Y-axis pulleys. Connects between a bearing and a stepper motor. Basically, I wanted to run a double belt drive for the Y-axis just because it's going to be such a long run. I was concerned about the stretch in the belts. This was the easiest way to combine those two belts onto a single drive, but also by having the support bearing, it relieves a lot of the strain on the stepper motor. But yeah, so I've cut the step in the piece, and now I'm gonna take and shorten it and face it off. And then I come to realize that I didn't measure correctly, and now I got to do it over again. So my drawing, I noted how long I needed for length. Just for the pulley section, I didn't take into account the bearing on top of that. So anyway, here I am making yet another one. I actually made a total of 5 of these shafts because I made the master, which you're seeing right now, that is going to just stay in my inventory for reference. And then I have the 4 more production ones. I was just trying to figure out what worked for speeding up the process overall. And here I'm just clearancing a bunch of holes on some new parts that I designed for this printer. You know, unfortunately with the 3D printing, you don't always get consistent holes, so it's just easier to chase them with the drill real quick. This redesigned Z-axis support has a channel for the cabling to run through, but it also has a mount for the drag chain. And also I decided that I didn't like the 3D printed extruder bracket, so I designed a new backplate that just does the backplate function. Makes it a little easier to print, but then I'm also going to mount an aluminum backplate, which you guys will get to see here in a little bit. In order to get the Y-axis support shaft in, I actually had to take the stepper motor loose again, just to provide a little clearance, because there's not enough wiggle room for that shaft to go through the bearing and clear the end of the stepper motor. But then got it all back together, lined up the set screw with the flat on the extruder or the stepper motor shaft. Got it all locked together, and now I'm switching over to the support for the bed. Decided to just drill and tap the holes on this one, because once the beds are on, it's going to be very difficult to access that. And this is why there's a small hole in the bed frame, so I can actually reach in from the underside and get better access to attach, detach that. Very important once the beds are in place to have good access there. And here I'm just assembling the tensioner setup for the Y-axis belts. It just has a couple screws so you can provide tension one way or the other on each of the belts. I'm going to get the belts as close as possible to begin with, so they should be within a tooth. But yeah, pretty simple little setup. And fortunately there was just enough belt to do all 3 axes on without having to get a second package, because these belts come in certain lengths, so I would rather do it with a I think it was a 5 meter package. What I ended up getting was just enough to do this whole project. And here we're going to address a cosmetic issue with this printer. The 350 millimeter shafts that I had were just a bit too long, so I'm going to cut them down to 300 millimeters which is actually a more standardized size, which will allow me to, they're more readily available. But after I cut them with the grinder, I'm taking it up to my big grinder, just chamfering the edges on them so it's not all sharp and nasty. Now I've switched over to doing some layout for the extruder bracket. Ended up just one of the scrap pieces from the bed support frame. Worked out really well for making the bracket itself. At first I thought I'd just file it down to the scribe line, and then I very quickly realized that was going to take forever. So I opted just to nibble it down a lot closer with the grinder, which I got it pretty close, and then was just able to square it up with the file real quick. Actually, overall result turned out pretty good. Definitely not a good mass production kind of technique, but yeah, for prototype this will be just fine. I printed up this template just to make the hole locations that much easier, but I found after the first couple holes that it tended to move a little more than I wanted it to, so I added in just a couple of screws that were basically an interference fit, and that seemed to lock everything down where it no longer wiggled on me. In the future I'll probably have to make an actual jig that locates everything properly, but that's a challenge for another day. Yeah, I decided to use my press brake to do the initial bend. Unfortunately, with that thick of material, I didn't want to bend it to a full 90, so I put it in the vise with a backing block and bent it the last little bit, and then just verified it with a square real quick. Worked out just fine. Again, things that need a proper fixture. But here I am just removing all the screws on the the plastic backing plate to install it on the official unit. And I oversized the holes just a little bit, which made the fine-tuning the alignment work out just fine. Which is kind of the way all the other printers I have, they just run the holes just a smidgen oversized, so it takes into account some of the different manufacturing variances. But now here I'm attaching the bed or the chain guide for the beds, so that way all the wiring will be nice and safe as it all moves around.
Alright, so we're just about finished with this project. The next video is going to cover the installation of the electronics, mostly because I'm still working through all the changes to the controller that's going to sit right here. I didn't like how the previous one was put together. It was too complex, and or the printing of it was too complex for what it needed to be. So I got a simpler version that looks a lot cleaner. But anyway, so we'll get you get this thing all final assembly and wired up in the next video. So I guess stay tuned if you want to see how this gets going, and then probably the video after that will be loading up firmware, so, and doing all the fine tuning. Anyway, hope you guys all have a great day, and catch you next time.